صباح الخير جميعا. Very good morning to all of you. Let me start by very good organization of this whole summit, which is very comprehensive, and I'm sure there was a lot of work behind. We have 45 minutes. We have to be digital in order to cover all our issues. Our session is investing in digital economy, a new approach for development funds. So what I will do in the beginning, I'll give 3 minutes to each one of our distinguished speakers to kick off our session. I will start with you, Dr. Fahad, please.
Thank you very much, for Your Excellency, and I'd like to thank the government of UAE and His Excellency Maali Abeid Al-Tahir, Mohammed Kirgawi, and Your Excellency for organizing this important session, the intersection between development funds and digital. Very, very important interaction between them. Saudi Arabia, and at the beginning here, like to focus on what Saudi Arabia have done in this area, and what later on in other questions will focus on the global challenges. But in Saudi Arabia, 40 years ago, we developed or established several development funds in industry, agriculture, social, real estate, and SMEs. The most recently, all of those funds re-examined their strategy, where digital became a central part in the development. Those funds have invested over the paid up capital is close to 300 billion riyal, where 250 billion already outstanding loans. But now attached with every loan, the requirement to make sure that the digital infrastructure is available for all industries, hospitals, companies. Saudi Arabia have invested tremendous amount in the infrastructure. I was the head of privatization of telecom over 20 years ago, and now we have 132% penetration of mobile services, more than 83% internet users with those mobiles. We have a huge program to extend broadband to all homes by 2025. Now we have 100% coverage of all villages for mobile, and broadband for $2.5 billion investment to target 60% of all the homes in the next 2 years. We have actually two important funds, one called Universal Service Fund. And the objective of that fund is to invest in the infrastructure where the telecom companies cannot reach all huge area of Saudi Arabia. Therefore, the government is picking up the initial cost of doing so. Also, the ICT fund is planning to help reskill people, innovators, developers. So in Saudi Arabia, we are well aware of the importance of digital infrastructure in our economy in order to reduce cost, increase productivity, and reduce the reliance on expatriates and routine works. So we have done a lot, and there is a lot of plan as part of the Vision 2030.
Thank you so much. If I jump to outside the region, Mr. Jin, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm so honored and privileged to attend this World Government Summit. Very briefly, let me share with you my views with regard to the importance of developing digital technology throughout the world. As you know, the mission of AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, is to promote broad-based economic and social development through investment in infrastructure and other productive sectors. And in the first 3 years, we managed to invest $7.5 billion, leveraging about $40 billion, thanks to the efforts of the World Bank and other institutions. Our idea is that in this world, you have to develop infrastructure to pave the path for broad-based economic social development. And in this respect, going digital is so important. But being digital, you must have the infrastructure. To a large extent, digital infrastructure and physical infrastructure are more or less overlapping. But still, digital infrastructure calls for something very special. You have to put resources in IT technology, AI, and more importantly, probably in many developing countries, education. You must have very good education, improving the education level of the people so that they can benefit from the digital world. For instance, we focus on developing smart city. How to do it? You must first of all have a physical city to talk about digital city, to talk about smart city. But developing a city in a traditional way is no option today. That's why you need to incorporate digital technology into developing the city, the smart city, so that you can be more cost effective, you can be more efficient. You will find in this new world, the economic structure and the productive activities would be more efficient, more cost effective because you go digital. So we pay attention to the balanced investment in the physical infrastructure and also digital infrastructure. So even though we do not invest directly in education, but by investing in the countries, the government can release the resources for education and health on their own. So we are doing a lot for this purpose, and we hope that people would change their mindset and think more in terms of developing the new technology, having the new technology working through the traditional economic activities to make them more efficient. So I think this is really a timely effort. And thank you very much for bringing us here and have exchange of ideas.
Thank you, Farid. The World Bank has different initiatives on the issue, and the Arab Monetary Fund and the World Bank work on different initiatives also in this area. If you may please, just 3 minutes of what you do in the digital economy and development.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Excellency. And thank you very much to the UAE for organizing this fantastic gathering. It's a fantastic platform for everybody to exchange views on these issues. Let me focus a bit on the Middle East and North Africa. By 2050, this region will count around 300 million young people knocking at the door of the job market. This is a tremendous opportunity. It is a challenge, of course, but it is also a tremendous opportunity. And we need to seize that opportunity. How can we seize that opportunity? It is basically by engaging in diversifying and opening our economies and taking them to another level. Another level, basically leapfrogging, as you mentioned, Mr. President. Leapfrogging and going to a new, looking at a new horizon. For that, we need, as the President mentioned, human capital. This is the real wealth of our nations, it's the human capital. And this is why we engaged in the last couple of years in putting together a human capital index so that we can measure the performance of our countries, of our youth, when it comes to engaging on education and on health and on social protection. And social protection is going to be one of the main agendas, talking about the digital economy and the economies of the future. Infrastructure is absolutely fundamental, and we need to keep investing in infrastructure, clever and smart infrastructure. And we should invest in it through the private sector. We should make sure that we really look at every opportunity to bring the private sector into the conversation. We are dealing with countries that are already heavily indebted. We need to open the door, deconstrain the private sector, deregulate as much as we can so that we have private investment coming into our countries and engaging in this new economy. Digitalization of the economy is what? Is exactly what we are talking about with you, Excellency. It's basically making sure that The new technology serves the economy, serves the creation of wealth, fintech, having digital payments, having young people and entrepreneurs getting into the place where they can actually trade and exchange goods and services fast and efficiently without having to go through the constraints of today, which are actually hampering the development of our economies. Last but not least, going back again to the Middle East and North Africa, and we've been discussing it earlier when we were preparing for this session. Over the coming 3 to 4 years, this region will have a tremendous opportunity to lead the development agenda in the world. Saudi Arabia, Excellency, will be leading the G20 for an extended period of time. And immediately after that, we have the World Bank and the IMF annual meetings in Marrakesh in Morocco. So we have a large chunk of time during which the global agenda of development will be shaped, thought through in this region. And this is an opportunity that is unique and that we should absolutely not miss. So this is a great time for us to open this conversation, to open this agenda, and to make sure, again, that we don't miss this unique opportunity.
Thank you, Farid. Mohammed, Abu Dhabi Fund for Development has so many initiatives in this area.
Absolutely, and Excellency, if you allow me, before I start, I would like first to thank you for this opportunity to be here today and speak about this very important and challenging subject at the same time. And I'm sure that as the discussion goes on, we will shed more light on the crucial and important role that development agencies are playing in achieving the sustainable development goals. Just to speak about ADFD, we at Abu Dhabi Fund have dispensed almost 84 billion dirhams worth of concessionary loans, grant, and also investment we invested on almost 1,000 of projects in 90 countries. We tried at the fund to assist countries as the normal financial institution. We try to assist them with their top priority, of course, by providing them with financial resources needed to finance infrastructure. Again, we're speaking of infrastructure because I totally agree with you. Unless we have the platform, unless we do have that infrastructure, no digital economy will be there. So we try to assist countries to achieve sustainable economic growth through the financial resources we try to provide for infrastructure to be financed, because those are the pillars for any economical growth. We do have a very good experience, as you mentioned correctly. If you go back a couple of years, or like 10 years back, it was a challenging job to electrify a small village far away from the national grid. It was almost impossible. But because of the advancement in the renewable energy, it became more effective, it became more feasible. So we started doing this. When I say started doing this, I'm speaking about government and also development agencies. We started electrifying small cities that are really far away from the grid. And everything came along with it. I'm speaking of education, I'm speaking of health, I'm speaking job creation. We're having a big debate recently, which started, a couple of years back, as we correctly mentioned, that when the industrial revolution took place, people started, shaking up, saying, what exactly going to happen to us in the future? They were afraid from machines. Now we're repeating the same thing again. People are scared from the internet, scared from this technology. But unless we encourage improvement, we encourage technology, we encourage innovation, we will not be able, we as development agency, to overcome challenges on the future. Whether we like it or not, Doctor, this is moving on. So we, as you said at the beginning, we have to be digital. We cannot, we must be digital. There are so many opportunities over the net, but we have to utilize it. We have to use this for education. We have to use this for health. We have to use it to the max. I mean, if you go to the Maldives, which is a very small city, just imagine life without the internet. Now, if you want to go to a doctor in a small village, you just go to a room, and you will get in touch with the doctor in Mali. Try to switch off this internet. What will happen? Just think of this. There is no turning back. We have to utilize this. We have to get the maximum out of it, but correctly. Unless we have the pillars, unless we have the right infrastructure, we wouldn't be able to do so.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you.
The Hakim, the IDB is leading this effort in the region and outside the region of your member countries. Can you please shed light on some of the initiatives you have been doing, especially given the different stages of development of your member countries?
Thank you very much, Excellency, for giving us this opportunity to the Islamic Development Bank to showcase some of the progress made under the digital economy area. I think before I go into what the Islamic Development Bank does, I need to highlight that the major components of the digital economy falls under three major categories. The infrastructure, which is the colleagues has alluded to, the e-business, which is the actual applications and the legal framework that needs to be set up in each country to allow actual business be carried out over the digital infrastructure, and then the e-commerce, and that is the product we see today, which is the actual delivery and transfer of goods and services from point to point. To the MDBs, they're more engaged into putting the infrastructure, because when we analyze the infrastructure, the major infrastructure, if we talk about fiber optic backbone connectivity, it is still a state-owned services, and this is where the MDBs need to invest more. IDB, as you may know, covers 57 member countries. The uniqueness of the IDB, of course, with the exception of the World Bank, the regional coverage, it covers countries from Far Asia all the way to Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, and all the way down to South America, like Suriname and Guyana, covering all the Middle East, plus 27 member countries in Africa. And that diversity, as you rightly mentioned, gives also a unique opportunity to the Islamic Development Bank to exchange experiences. We have a unique program called the Reverse Linkage, through which we carry out knowledge from one country to another. So we see a country that demands a need for a digital economy development, putting up the legal framework, the infrastructure, the applications, and another country is advanced on that area. We try to help these two countries to benefit from each other through the reverse linkage means. We've also introduced some 10 years ago an incentive on the loans that normally countries take. We give them 10% of grant on top of the loan, specifically for digital economy, ICT, and STI applications that are attached to the specific projects under consideration. And that was the early initiative that the Islamic Development Bank, to incentivize the governments when they come even for a road project, they would consider a digitization component with it so they can be eligible for the grant component. We've recently established it's only last year, $500 million. It's a grant STI fund. And this is specifically to promote science, technology, innovation with a major focus on digitization. As a result, the first batch of the winners from this fund of the innovators have had an academy training in Cambridge in December last year. And we had a summit for STI, and the theme of the summit was smart cities. So we know the needs of the member countries on digitization is on high demand, and we have no option except that to allocate more funds to the digitization. We've also established an Engage platform, which is a platform that brings all the innovators, smart ideas with the investors in order to come up with solutions. So the Islamic Development Bank in general is moving more and more with spending now. It's exceeding $1 billion on financing direct projects for the governments, on digitization and connectivity, and moving more and more towards supporting digitization. We know today that achieving the SDGs will require inclusiveness and also will require productivity. So the productivity has to increase. And these two means can only be achieved by more and more digitizations in our member countries.
Thank you. Dr. Fahad, back to you. Saudi Arabia is going to lead the G20 next year. And financing is challenge, is the constraint, and what could be new initiatives at global and regional levels in order to boost digital economy to serve economic development?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. In Saudi Arabia, we already have started developing our agenda for the presidency of the G20 in 2020. And we have been consulting with international organizations, think tanks, member countries, scholars around the world, trying to identify challenges in the future and also propose policy designs that could overcome those challenges or open opportunities for the whole world. And definitely digitalization is a core topic in the G20. It has been carried over the last few presidencies. Argentina last year gave special focus. This year, Japan is given even more special focus on Industry 4.0. And Saudi Arabia will continue this legacy issue in different aspects, including promotion of artificial intelligence. There are many countries, and I'm very proud of the UAE. They have a minister of artificial intelligence. This morning, I attended the first part of their presentation, very ambitious plan. In Saudi Arabia also, we embrace this. And the G20 in general give this importance. And it is very important to rally the support from the development funds to support all countries, especially countries in need for the infrastructure. But what's important also among the different development funds is to coordinate and to move the idea of traditional lending only to more of support and facilitation. Development funds don't need to do the traditional lending only. They might do only senior lending, part of it, and try to find ways for the private sector, crowdfunding, other more creative ways to support building those infrastructure around the world. And building the infrastructure, the physical part is important. But what is also more important is building the human skills and reskilling people to be more innovative, develop applications, artificial intelligence, content, because that's what's important. And also to use the technologies. It's very important. I was sharing with my colleagues. I went to school in the US in the 70s, and I was so astonished that I moved from cash to checks, where I write a check of $2.50 to buy a McDonald's or $3 to buy gasoline. And my son and daughter moved from cash to plastic, where they have their ATM cards. And now our family are moving to totally e-payment in their system. This revolution is very important to embrace it. Now, one of the issues that we in the G20 care about, and again, Saudi Arabia having the honor of being in the presidency in the G20, we carry with us the issues and challenges in this region. The GCC, the Arab region, the Islamic region, we are responsible to carry all those issues. And we're working with the Arab Monetary Fund and the IDB to understand what are the challenges facing our region in order to provide solutions and get our membership in the G20 to support. But as we are all excited and embracing, and we should, the digital economy, let's remember the negative consequences of it. It displaces people out of jobs. And we cannot stop this. It's going to happen. The only way is to reskill people, to develop safety nets in our society, to move away from routine jobs to more intellectual jobs in art, in design, in education. Most of those jobs are going to be less likely to be replaced by artificial intelligence and machine. And therefore, we need to have a balance between developing and moving very fast in infrastructure and digitalization, and yet making sure that there is safety net for our young and youth who are coming to the job market.
Very good. Back to you, Mr. Jin. What could be the innovative approaches of finance, given finance is a very big challenge for banks, for developmental institutions, in order to speed up infrastructure projects, especially digital infrastructure?
Thank you for the question. And I think in this new era, the development banks or financiers, be they public or private, should really look at the way the investment is going to be made. And if you invest in the traditional way, it will not be very much productive, will not be very much profitable, or even you run the risk of losing your investment. So I think we should think about where you put your resources. We, in our bank, focus on the balanced investment, physical infrastructure, and do the physical infrastructure in a digital way, and using digital technology to improve the cost effectiveness and efficiency of your investment. If we do not think outside the box, if we continue to do the traditional way, probably this is going to be a big problem. And in this regard, we attach importance to working with the private sector, which means we need to mobilize the support from the private sector for investment in the digital world, or for the investment to promote the digital world. You see, when you look at all this new technology, AI, whatever, it all comes from the private sector's innovation. It never comes from the government. It never comes from a couple of people sitting in the ministry thinking about all of this. It never happened. It all comes from the private sector. So if we are working with the private sector, more brilliant ideas will come out. So in my view, digital world is defined as one in which the economic structure and the social structure would be digitized in such a way that investment can produce high-level public goods and public services, and high-quality consumer goods for the people. So people can reap the most benefit from the investment we make today. So by working with the private sector, we should understand it's not simply for the purpose of getting that money. It's the way to get their ideas and to do it in a more cost-effective way and bring more benefits to the societies.
Very good. And then it's probably to you, Ferid, given the pressure on public budgets, private-public partnership is probably one way to achieve the finance and to face the challenge. What could be done in that area? And please, also I want you to comment on capacity building in order to increase the skills of labor as we move to digital infrastructure and digital finance.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And let me build on Dr. Mubarak and Mr. Jin's statements and communication. One is the issue of the private sector. It is absolutely essential. Public-private partnerships, yes, absolutely. This is where we should be going. And there's also the fact that in anything that the World Bank does, when it comes to any type of infrastructure, we first make sure that we have exhausted all possibilities for private sector finance. One, because the private sector is more efficient when it comes to investment in infrastructure and in everything else. And second, because of what you just mentioned, the high level of indebtedness of a number of our countries. So we need to make sure that we give some relief to the government, relief to public finance, and move our attention and our energy into promoting private sector investment. So this is something that is absolutely important. We call that in the bank the cascade. It's basically making sure that first we look at the private sector, and then we go and last resort, we end up with public sector finance. This is one. Second is the issue of human capital. And Excellency, you mentioned education. It's absolutely fundamental that we move our education systems into a totally different place. When we had, we launched in Bali during the last World Bank and IMF annual meetings, the Human Capital Index. When you look at the ranking, the Middle East and North Africa is not necessarily brilliant. We are very much behind, very much behind. Not for a lack of investment in education, for the lack of efficient investment in education. So what we need to do in the coming few years is revamp our curricula, revamp our way of managing our education system, and make sure that our investment brings about a return that makes sense. That's the only way. Investment in human capital. Creativity is fundamental. We are not going to be competing, at the level of, lowest wages. That's not the way. The way is to be creative, to be innovative, to bring new ideas, and again, to leapfrog, to go beyond beyond emulating and doing what others have done before us. We need to create new ways of promoting our economy. And last but not least, you mentioned the capacity building. There are technical ways of engaging between the private sector and the public sector. But what we need really to think about is what Your Excellency mentioned, the issue of the, quote, negative impact of digitalization.
And cybersecurity.
Absolutely. We need social protection. We need to reinvent social protection, reinvent our pension systems so that we can take care of those who may actually fall by the wayside, at least momentarily, so that we make sure that we don't move from the unemployed to the irrelevant. When you are unemployed, you can still be reskilled. If you become irrelevant, it's done. So we need to make sure that our societies do not get into a place where a large number of our people become irrelevant.
Very good. Mohammed, given the financing challenges of development fund, no matter how much capital you have, you are going to face that challenge. Could we have other sources like capital and debt market, and the development funds will help developing countries in a sense of financing?
So before we get into that, this is becoming really digital. Everyone's speaking of digital. I would like to take it back to being human here. So capacity building. First of all, just let me add. Capacity building is very important and crucial. We have to focus on that. We have to build that, and we, as you are aware, Doctor, we try to assist countries on their capacity building. We also design our policies around their need. But going back to the resources and to the digital economy, ICT projects are important for any digital economy. And we are providing them with a low-cost financing, or let's say with a high grant element, which opened the door for them to go and secure another loan, maybe from the private sector. I'd like also to add, we at the fund try to cap our participation at 50%, which make it a must for governments to go to the private sector. So once you start having this blend of finance, this is, as you correctly said, unless we have the private sector on board, things will not progress. So by capping our finance, we're opening doors for everyone to jump in. I'd like also to mention that we, on the last 47 years, we've been trying to gather everyone or join forces with us to overcome the challenges we had on the development world. We did co-financing, we did parallel financing, which opened the door for everyone to assist. And I think it wouldn't be right, Doctor, not to mention the Arab Coordination Group. This is a very successful story. I'm really personally proud of. So many projects would have not seen the light without this coordination, unless because of those 9 entities joining forces together to make those stories. I mean, if you go back to the 40 years and start digging and fighting the project because of the joint forces among those entities, we have those projects, which made a difference to human life. You said to be sustainable, you have to have revenue, as you correctly said. We at the fund do have an investment window where we try to secure a good return on our equity to be sustainable, to continue supporting government.
Very good. Back to you, Islamic Development Bank. Responsible finance, issuance of bonds, sukuk. You are a leader in issuing sukuk in our region in order to finance infrastructure and digital infrastructure. Can you please share your experience with us?
Yeah, allow me, Excellency, first to, I think I can't go without thanking His Excellency Suwaidi mentioning the Arab Coordination Group importance, which is a fundamental coordination in the region that has made many projects a reality that would have not been possible otherwise.
Absolutely.
It is through that coordination that such projects, huge, mega-scale ones, that the Arab Coordination Group made it a reality. Also on the PPP side, I don't want to forget this. We are holding the second PPP forum in Morocco. It's going to be this month, just prior to our annual meeting. The first one was held in Riyadh, and this is a great success where we really brought the private sector together to work with the public sector. We know that there is no way that we can meet the development needs today without engaging the private sector. However, the private sector needs some platform, needs some environment for them to be engaged. And this is where we try to help the governments officially through the MDBs and the coordination group into providing that environment for the private sector to get more and more engaged. Now, coming back to the main aspect of sukuk, of course, we do sukuk. Sukuk are basically bonds, but they're on the Sharia compliant requirements. They're very much asset based, and I've seen on one of the early papers you were referring to the development impact sukuk, or you referred to it as development impact bonds. That is an issue that need to be addressed through the Sharia compliant specialists, because impact itself is not seen as an asset yet. So assets are usually goes down to physical projects and physical infrastructures. But definitely it's an area, the same like green sukuk, that we are investigating and we're looking at. One area that I would like to mention especially on providing new products that are addressing digital economies. Last year, the IDB has launched a global award on fintech, mainly on blockchains. And the award was won by the International Federation for Red Cross and Red Crescent in Geneva for developing a smart application for blockchain, which would allow and promote private sector to engage more in financing and humanitarian support. And I think it's an innovative way. We have just launched a new platform for crowdfunding, where now we're addressing public to finance projects directly with a blockchain means. That's an innovative way of addressing the resource mobilization gaps as well, of engaging all the public and the private through digital means. I think there are a number of ways as the demands increase with the member countries that we look at. And as I mentioned earlier, our latest summit on science, technology, and digitization addressed the theme of smart cities, which is directly addressing the need for digitization, as well as our continuous operation of the STI and Innovation Fund, the Transform, that will carry on for the next few years, addressing and supporting and incentivizing investment into digitization. So going back to the issue of the sukuk, as I said, our experts in the IRTI, which is the Islamic Research and Training Institute, as an entity of the IDB, closely looking at the need or the possibility of developing sukuk specifically for digitization in terms of a non-asset based. But we do have the normal sukuks that cover all our projects, including the ICT projects nowadays.
Thank you, sir. We have 2 minutes. Do we have one question from the floor?
May I make a comment? Just a quick comment.
Please.
Just on this. Every time we talk about digital infrastructure, we look down, where we dig trenches lay cables, and build towers. Yesterday, we heard from His Excellency Al Gargawi that there are 2 companies who are sending hundreds of satellites to the sky, where infrastructure going to be from the top. We need to stop wire investment to wireless investment. And this will take care, especially of those developing countries. Very important. The second thing, I think, we in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, we move beyond building infrastructure. We are beyond that. We are improving it to the next generation and reaching out to the last percentile. What we need is further development in the software, in the development, in the innovation. That's very important. And finally, for those, your clients, the developing countries and poor countries, it is very important. There is plenty of private sector money and investors' money who would love to finance these projects. What they need is the rule of the law, the protection, the de-risking of those investments. If that happens, then plenty of money will come and you don't have to spend your money. You can just spend your effort in developing this rule of law systems that will bring a lot of investment. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the audience, speakers, Ministry of Finance of being our. Thanks everybody.